Salute in the Enchanted Forest by Richard Gould. Once dark nights abyss as gold as the pouring rainwork. Salute up from a deep slumber, the bice that reverberized it thrones the Dick's words as Carlin here. The house she was nervous siya calmid here help and Paul low with the vice shot was stars to hear her pit here into a dense forest. Salute was asked to his head at the heads of Paris, parring in the shade of a large tree. She could not believe it. The saw virus dolls made of gold. The surroundings were all you also a dorm neat white beautiful pearls and the amounts the place as sampron did by a variety of flowers. Salute was trumpets and someone and suddenly rubbed her is there. She was amazing to see a very handsome preacher white a shimmering smile. He gave her a glass of drink and front here in front of the Lord salute could not believe what was happening all of a sudden. The ears not heed to the accompaniment of hitting music. She was surprised when a trumpet had so did as if a coronation was about to take place. Unexpectedly, a very buried from now here, carrying a crown. The fairy happily placed the clown one salute head after the cloning. The crown is hooded. Long live the queen, long live the queen. Salude's happiness was overflowing when suddenly she pet pin on her head. She reckoned the head shot commission was pinning here. She opened in here. Yes, he dearly and how here moon mother's face see than really was she was just driving. Salute in the enchanted forest.
The learner mispronounced the word enchanted and forest as enchanted and forest.
By Richard Gold. Once dark nights abyss as gold as the pouring rainwork. Salute up from a deep slumber.
The learner mispronounced the words one, night, and voice as once, nice, and vice. The learner substituted the word cold with gold. The learner said pouring and substituted the word walk with work. The learner mispronounced slumber as slumber.
The vice that reverber memorized it from the dictionary words as Carlin here.
The learner mispronounced again the word voice as bice. She then initially read reverberated as reverber, then reverberated, and successfully corrected herself. The learner mispronounced true as throws. The learner initially pronounced tick as dice, then dicks. The learner substituted the woods with words, and the word was with us. Instead of calling, the learner said carling. Then she also mispronounced her as here.
The house she was nervous siya calmed here help and Paul low with the vice shot was stars to hear.
The learner initially pronounced the word do as da, then douse. The learner initially pronounced nervous as near, and eventually corrected it at her second attempt. The learner mispronounced the words she, calmed, and herself as sha, calmid, and here help. The learner initially said Paul, then Poloid. She unsuccessfully corrected herself. And for the third time, she mispronounced again the word voice as vice. Then she said shot instead of that. The learner substituted the word strange with stars. Then she mispronounced again her with here.
Her Peter with here into a densely forest.
The learner said here instead of her. The learner mispronounced dense as densey, and she initially said poret and then potters. She unsuccessfully corrected herself.
Salute was asked to his head at the heads of Paris paring in the shade of a energy tree.
The learner initially pronounced was as us and eventually corrected it. She also mispronounced astonished as astonished. The learner substituted sight with its. Then she initially said pe and then Paris, and successfully corrected it on her two attempts. The learner mispronounced partying as paring. She then also mispronounced shade as shardy and large as largy.
She could not believe it.
The learner mispronounced could as cold and believe as believe.
The saw virus dolls made of gold.
The learner substituted she with the and mispronounced so as saw. The learner then mispronounced various as virus.
The the surroundings were all you also a dormit white beautiful girls and the amounts.
The learner repeated the word the twice. Instead of surroundings, the learner said surroundings. The learner initially said all you and eventually corrected it at her second attempt. The learner mispronounced adored and weed as adorned and white. The learner initially said beautiful and successfully corrected it at her second attempt. The learner mispronounced diamonds at diamonds.
The the place as sampled by a variety of flowers. flowers.
The learner repeated the word the twice and substituted the word was with as. She then mispronounced surrounded as surrounded. The learner mispronounced variety as variety. She then initially said flowers, then flowers.
Salute was trumpets and someone and suddenly rub her is there.
The learner mispronounced the words surprised when someone suddenly and shoulder as cernpeds and somiwan suddenly and is there.
She was amazing to see, a very handsome preacher writes a shimmering smile.
The learner mispronounced the words amazed, handsome, creature, with, charming, and smile as amazing, handstrom, creature, whites, charming, and ismil.
He gave her a glass of drink and prawns here in front of the Lord.
The learner substituted he with she and eventually corrected it at her second attempt. The learner also mispronounced her as here. The learner initially pronounced and as a, then eventually corrected it. She then mispronounced brought and her as prawns and here. The learner also mispronounced front and crowd as pront and plor.
Salute or not believe that was happening.
The learner said core instead of could. And again, she mispronounced the word believe as believe and the word what as ats.
All of Sandy the ears not heed to the accompaniment of enter not hitting music.
The learner mispronounced the words sudden, fairies, dance, and accompaniment as sandid, pairs, nathid, and accompaniment. The learner also initially said enter, then enter not hitting, unsuccessfully corrected herself. The learner said music instead of music.
She was surprised when a trumpet had so did as if a coronation was about to take place.
The learner said surprised. The learner mispronounced when as win and trumpet as trumpet. The learner initially said so, then so did. The learner also mispronounced coronation as coronation.
Unexpectedly, a very buried from now here, carrying a crown.
Instead of unexpectedly, the learner said unexpectedly. The learner said also appeared instead of appeared. The learner mispronounced the words nowhere, carrying, and crown as now here, carrying, and crown.
The very happily lasted the clown one salute head.
The learner said placid instead of placed. The learner mispronounced crown and on as crown and one. The learner omitted S in saludes.
After the cloning, the crown is hooded long. Live the queen, long live the queen.
The learner initially said claw, then cloning. The learner mispronounced the words crowd and shouted as crowned and is hooted. In this sentence, the pronunciation should be live, but the learner pronounced it as live.
Salude's happiness was overflowing when suddenly she pet pin on her head.
The learner mispronounced happiness as happiness. The learner initially said way, then win, unsuccessfully corrected herself. The learner mispronounced suddenly as suddenly. The learner substituted felt with pet. The learner also mispronounced the word her as here and substituted side with hid.
She reckoned the head shot commission was pinking here.
The learner mispronounced the words recognize, dot, and someone as recornihead, shot, and commission. The learner repeated the first syllable of the word pinching. The learner mispronounced again the word her as here.
She opened her eyes. He dearly and how her mother's face.
The learner mispronounced the word opened as opendin and the word her as here again. The learner said yes instead of eyes and widely instead of widely. The learner mispronounced the word so as how. The learner initially said man, then mot, and on her third attempt, she said mothers. She unsuccessfully corrected herself.
She then realized she was just driving.
The learner mispronounced the words she and then as si and dan. The learner said realized instead of realize and substituted the word that with was. The learner mispronounced the word dreaming as driving.